Gertrude's in London. Gertrude, what do you think?
Well, I think they should be here, and I find it absolutely unbelievable that people keep referring to he should just have kept his mouth shut in his book. Already in 2013 did Reuters write that Harry had killed in Afghanistan, and everybody who had been on the Apache helicopter, also referred to as a 7-ton killer machine, had killed.
Well, they shouldn't be talking about it. He shouldn't be talking about it, Gertrude. And that's basic soldiering. You don't come back from a war zone and say, I killed 26.
That is all over now. That is all done. But this is about Meghan. From Henry Basu, who was the head of counterterrorism, he said from Meghan put her foot on British soil, she and Harry instantly got horrific and constant deaths, and many more than any other royal.
I do believe that, though, as well.
That is not
it's
true.
Neil Basu.
They were welcome to this country initially as a wonderful, refreshing, new, dynamic couple for the royal family, and they threw it all back in our faces.
No, they were briefed against by the gang around William and Kate. Well, everyone knows that.
Well,
because they got scared that they were getting more popular.
Well,
and it went out of control.
Well, I can't necessarily agree with that. What I know is they didn't help themselves in the eyes of the British public by, pledging their loyalty to the royal family.
Why isn't there a massive threat to Prince or ex-Prince Andrew, given what he is said to have done? Why nobody discusses his security? I guess in the end he must have some security, does he? I don't know.
Well, he's got security around the place where he lives.
Or maybe he's just basically cut behind the shutters and no one can even. He's not public anymore. I suppose that's the difference. Okay, I've answered my.
Gertrude's call to the Jeremy Vine show has now become one of the most talked about moments in British broadcasting. A rare explosion of truth cutting through the fog of media spin, misinformation, and calculated disingenuousness. On a show known for its carefully curated narratives and subtle attempts to paint Prince Harry as the villain in every scandal, Gertrude arrived like a lightning bolt, shattering the comfortable rhythm of the panel and exposing the hypocrisy that has been allowed to run unchecked for far too long. Her voice did not shake with hesitation. It vibrated with conviction. From the moment her voice came through the speakers, there was a sense, almost a spiritual shift, that something extraordinary was about to happen. She began calmly, with a tone so steady it demanded the studio's attention before she had even launched into her main point. She said that Prince Harry, the son of the king, the man who grew up under the relentless spotlight of the British monarchy, the man whose every footstep was dissected, analysed, misinterpreted, and weaponized, deserves security. Not as a luxury, not as a privilege, but as an absolute necessity rooted in reality, trauma, and history. She made it clear that anyone pretending not to understand why Harry needs protection is either in denial, dishonest, or willfully blind. Her opening line landed with such control and clarity that Jeremy Vine, who is usually quick to interrupt or steer a conversation into safer waters, froze. His lips tensed, his expression stiffened, and his entire posture shifted as though he sensed a narrative slipping through his fingers. But Gertrude had only just begun. She moved straight into the heart of the issue with the accuracy of someone who had been paying attention, someone who wasn't relying on tabloid-fed lies, someone who cared about truth rather than spectacle. She said that the story about Harry's mention of Taliban kills did not begin with Harry boasting, bragging, or glorifying violence, as the tabloids have pretended for years. She explained, slowly, methodically, and powerfully, that it was the British press who first took that one reflective paragraph in Spare, a sensitive, emotionally complex passage written not from ego, but from trauma, and transformed it into a national scandal. The media pulled that line from a 500-page memoir, slapped it onto their front pages, stuffed it into provocative headlines, and then peddled it across television panels with breathless hysteria. She reminded Jeremy Vine, with a tone that blended disappointment and disbelief, that it was his industry, not Harry, that sensationalized it. Harry did not run to the press to brag about anything. He did not parade numbers. He did not seek validation or glory. Instead, he wrote a measured, thoughtful reflection about what it means for a soldier to live with the memory of lives taken in war. He wrote about the psychological toll. He wrote about the moral weight. He wrote about the emotional scars that come from serving on the front lines. But the tabloids ignored all of that. They cherry-picked one line, distorted it beyond recognition, stripped away context, and stamped a dangerous narrative onto it, one that could attract extremists and put Harry directly in harm's way. Gertrude did not let Jeremy evade responsibility. She said clearly and boldly that his comment, "Harry shouldn't be talking about it," was not only misleading, but deeply dishonest. She outlined the timeline. Harry wrote a quiet paragraph, the press shouted it to the world, and then the same press blamed Harry for the noise they created. Jeremy Vine shifted uncomfortably because the truth was undeniable, and Gertrude was presenting it in a way that left no escape route, no loophole, no wiggle room. She called out the exact reporters who took Harry's reflection and turned it into clickbait. She reminded the audience that one royal reporter went so far as to tag Taliban-linked accounts on social media, a reckless act that no ethical journalist would ever consider. The intent seemed clear: to stir hostility, to provoke a response, to increase the threat against Harry while pretending they were simply reporting the news. Gertrude told the nation what it had needed to hear for years. The press didn't just twist the story, they weaponized it. They amplified it. They internationalized it. They made Harry a target. And then they pointed back at him and said, "Look what you've done." The silence that followed was electric. Jeremy Vine, for the first time in the show that day, didn't have an immediate comeback. He tried to interrupt, but Gertrude pressed on. She said she was tired of the lies, tired of the distortions, tired of watching a man who has survived war, trauma, loss, and relentless media abuse being blamed for the consequences of the lies others created. She said she had watched the British press tear down a man who had served his country with honour, who had risked his life in Afghanistan, who had walked behind his mother's coffin with the eyes of the world on him, and who still carries emotional wounds that the public cannot see. And then she delivered the blow that sent shockwaves through the studio. "You all made Harry a target. You all created this risk. And now you pretend he doesn't need protection. That is shameful." Her words were not shouted. They were not delivered in anger. They were spoken with the power of someone who has had enough, someone who refuses to let truth be buried under the weight of lies. Jeremy Vine attempted weakly to reframe the debate. He repeated the familiar line that Harry shouldn't be talking about it. But Gertrude interrupted him with a kind of polite, devastating precision rarely heard from callers. She reminded him that Harry did not initiate the conversation. Harry did not exaggerate anything. Harry did not boast. She said the only people who talked loudly, talked obsessively, and talked irresponsibly were Jeremy and his kind, a phrase that hung in the air like a sword suspended above his head. For the first time, Jeremy Vine looked genuinely unsettled. His shoulders tightened, his tone wavered, and in that moment, pushed into a corner he could no longer escape, he reluctantly admitted one truth he has danced around for years. The royal family did brief against Harry. The institution fed hostile stories to the press. They made him the scapegoat. They allowed, and in some cases encouraged, the press to vilify him while protecting others more favoured, more useful to the monarchy's internal politics. Gertrude seized that admission instantly. She said that if Jeremy could acknowledge that Harry was betrayed, undermined, and thrown under the bus by his own family, then he cannot, in good conscience, pretend that Harry does not face a higher security risk. She explained that when a prince is rejected by the palace, smeared by the institution, targeted by extremists, and mocked by the press, the security threat does not decrease, it multiplies. This was the moment the audience felt the ground shift. This was the moment Jeremy Vine knew he had been outmatched. This was the moment listeners across the country began replaying her call, because it was so clear, so honest, so sharp, that it cut through years of propaganda. Gertrude became a symbol, not just a caller. She became the voice of all those who have watched Prince Harry endure cruelty disguised as journalism. She became the voice of people who refuse to forget what happened to Harry's mother, how the paparazzi hunted her, how the palace failed to protect her, how the world claimed to mourn her, but then repeated the same toxic patterns with her son. She became the voice of those who understand that trauma is not erased by royal status. Trauma does not disappear because a man was born in a palace. Trauma follows, haunts, and shapes someone for life. She spoke about Harry not as a celebrity, not as a royal, but as a human being, a husband, a father, a veteran, a survivor. She said that Harry's desire to protect Meghan and their children is not weakness, not entitlement, but love. And she said that the way the British press twists that love into something negative is cruel and despicable. She spoke with compassion, and in every sentence she affirmed Harry's humanity. She praised him for his courage, his honesty, his resilience. She praised him for walking away from a system that was killing him emotionally. She praised him for choosing peace over tradition, and she praised him for telling the truth in a world that punishes honesty. If Prince Harry had been listening, he would have smiled, he would have been moved, because the love and respect in Gertrude's voice was unmistakable. The warmth was genuine, the solidarity was real. She spoke as someone who sees him not as a tabloid caricature, but as a man trying to live a peaceful life, despite the forces constantly working to destroy that peace. And in that moment, Jeremy Vine could not handle it. He could not twist her words. He could not silence her. He could not outmaneuver her. So he simply sat there, visibly defeated, as Gertrude continued speaking truth after truth, each one stripping away another layer of the media's false narrative. It was a rare moment where the host of his own show was rendered powerless by a caller who had nothing but truth on her side. Gertrude's call matters, because it represents the shift happening across the UK and the world. People are no longer swallowing everything the tabloids feed them. People are questioning the narratives. People are defending Harry. People are refusing to let the press rewrite reality. She said what millions have been thinking. The media has treated Harry with cruelty, dishonesty, and obsession, and the country should be ashamed of the danger it has placed him in. Her words will be remembered because they were brave, bold, and beautifully delivered. She defended Harry with love, with truth, with compassion, and with unwavering strength. She exposed Jeremy Vine's disingenuousness without ever raising her voice. She shattered the carefully constructed illusion the press has held for years, and she did it all live, without preparation, without notes, without hesitation. This was not just a caller's opinion. It was a moment of national clarity, a moment where truth broke through, a moment where Prince Harry was defended loudly, proudly, and unapologetically. And somewhere, Harry would surely say, "Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you for standing up for me when so few in the media ever have."
Wow, wow, wow. This sounds very, very interesting and impressive. And for my all peculiar and amazing Sussex family, thank you all for watching, for tuning in Daily Diaries Fridays, and also thank you for working with us along this juncture. It has not been that easy without you people, and we don't take that for granted. We appreciate a lot, and thank you, and have a good time. Keep shining, keep it light, keep it here at Daily Diaries Friday. Bye bye. See you next time. Have a good moment.